Hello, everyone. Welcome to one more episode of our podcast, Real AI Now. We have a very special guest today. Her name is Afke Schouten. Afke helps companies generate business value with AI and create an environment where data scientists can thrive. So she's also a lecturer at HVZ University of Applied Sciences in Zurich. And starting next week, I believe you're going to be head of data and AI strategy at a company called Xebia Data for Switzerland. Right. Welcome, Afke.
Thank you, Paulo, for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Pleasure. So I'll jump right to it. ChatGPT is a big topic. And what do you think about ChatGPT? That will be my first question. And in particular, in more generic terms, large language models. And how is that going to change the way companies work and approach the topic of AI?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm very grateful that it happened. And I would like to kind of make the comparison to when the iPhone was introduced, right? Before that, there were smartphones, but there were only a small amount of people using smartphones. And then the iPhone got introduced, and since then, basically everyone is using a smartphone. And I believe with ChatGPT, we've gone through a similar thing. I mean, you and I know AI has been around for quite a while, and many things have been possible, but it hadn't arrived yet at the big masses, and everyone talks about it now, right? So like parents, grandparents, everyone wants to know about it. Suddenly it's all in the media. And for me, it's really that like people have woken up now, and I've noticed it myself, right? Lots of journalists, people asking, can you come and write an article, or can you come and speak about this topic? And I'm like, oh, not much has happened for us, but for them, it has, right? So, and I think it will have a huge impact.
So what's changed? What is the difference, right?
I think the biggest difference is, right, so large language models, as you said, right, they've been around, and OpenAI is not the only one. But the big difference is they put it into an application and made it available to the masses. And that's for me what the big difference is about ChatGPT. Suddenly everyone can speak with an AI, and it gives a reply that sounds sensible, right?
Yeah. And it seems to really understand what you write.
Yes,
so
it does.
I've been working with conversational AI, more specifically chatbots and voice bots, for I would say at least 5-6 years. We have been developing those kind of things, and it's very difficult, right? Or it was very difficult to create a chatbot that it was actually useful, that actually understood what people were saying. Now, with this kind of models, that changes because it finally works, right? Chatbots didn't really work until now, right? And so do you agree that the big change is that this is a chatbot, but it's a chatbot backed by a large language model, that it actually works? It's the first chatbot that actually works.
Actually works. That's not rule-based, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would agree. And still, I mean, it still doesn't fully work, right? Because it still sometimes gives wrong output. So I think it's still important that people understand they need to be diligent in how they take the results, and that they check it. But the one thing that it does is it has an impact on every company, because everyone will be able to now use ChatGPT to write blog posts, to write emails. I had someone actually who told me, it's like, I regularly write a VBA script for something, and I took a day, but now I can use ChatGPT and it takes me half an hour, right? So it has an impact on the workforce, which I find super, super interesting. Like, it's like everyone that hadn't thought about it now has to. I mean, it's the same for us at the university. Think about students writing a thesis.
It's it's huge. I mean, the implications of it are enormous. So how do you talk about this with, I mean, for example, I've been a software developer, a programmer for many years. And I was also for some years a data scientist. But at the time, I'm a bit old. So at the time, we used MATLAB and we used C and Java to do data science. Nowadays, it's mostly Python and R, but mostly Python. But I can't code in Python. I can, but I'm not a specialist. So I've been using, sometimes I'm just playing with some machine learning model, and I use ChatGPT to generate the code and say, oh, generate code, please, that does that and that. And then I take the code and I fix it. Well, it's so much faster. It's 10 times faster than having to write the code myself. I would have used Stack Overflow anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. And I
but
mean,
this is better. This is much better because
it is much better. And it's like
you can describe what the code should do. Then you look at the code and say, no, it's not really what I meant. So you refine your prompt. You say try again, and then the code is better. It's closer to what you want, and then you iterate once, twice, 3 times, and then at the 3rd or 4th time you have almost 90% the code that you need. You just need to copy and use it. It's quite impressive.
One thing actually that strikes me from what you said, right? It's like, oh, I need to look at it, enhance it, reiterate. For that, you do need these coding skills. So it's not yet good enough for people without coding skills to use ChatGPT to code, which is, I find interesting. So it's like decision support system still in that kind of sense. In other ways, you could automate.
I agree. But I mean, isn't it the same with like writing a blog post? Can you really, I mean, if you are a writer and you write a blog post, can you really just take the output of ChatGPT? I mean, you probably would not do that. At least I wouldn't. But I would use it to generate ideas. So sometimes I write blog articles or even LinkedIn posts, and I have writer's block. What I'm going to write about today. Now I think, okay, and I have a topic. Now sitting down, thinking about the topic, writing down like the ideas. I go to ChatGPT and ask, give me 10 bullet points about this. Well, it gives me ideas, and I start writing based on that.
I think it depends on the risk.
Yeah.
Right? What's the risk to, I guess, if you talk about write a nice email to my friend, I could just copy paste and go, what's the risk that could happen? Well, that the person doesn't like me anymore. With the blog post that goes out to a couple of thousands of people.
That you sound superficial.
Risk is different. I think it's and for that, right, it's important that people getting educated about what ChatGPT is and that how to use it. Right? I find this, and this is also every time I speak about ChatGPT, this is what I say. Hey, look, it's great, but don't use it for something that you are not competent in, right? Because there's a risk that what ChatGPT says is wrong or slightly wrong.
Excellent point.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I mean, to me, I see it as a productivity tool, not a tool that actually does the job for me, because it's not there yet, but it increases my productivity, right? And I think if I'm not a developer, I don't do that every day, and I keep making the point of talking about code as opposed to just free text and content, because I think it's better at writing code than it is at writing generic content.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
Because it's far more objective, and it's something. I mean, it's writing code is a simpler task than writing some. Let's say you want to write fiction, right? If you ask GPT to write fiction, it's not really great at it. It doesn't really. You can see immediately that it's not great what it's doing. But if you ask it to write code or to write something about a very specific topic, some more technical text about something, then it's very good at it. And that's why, but I still see it as a productivity tool. But let me ask you a question. There's 1 or 2 points that you made that I want to pick on. One is people should learn how to use it, right? So do you have in your consulting work, you were invited, you mentioned you were invited to talk about this. So what advice do you give to companies about ChatGPT? What is it that they need to pay attention to, and how do they need to train their employees? What does this mean to companies? Because I'm pretty sure that as we speak, people in companies right now on their professional lives, they are using ChatGPT to help them to increase their productivity. Well, what are the implications of this? What does a company need to take into account?
Yeah, and I mean, there's different perspectives of that, right? So
yeah.
I think first is organizations need to think about, hey, where can we actually leverage ChatGPT to increase productivity, right? And at the same time, I think they need to educate those employees that will be using ChatGPT as to how to use it, and well, basically the how it works, what are do's and don'ts in using ChatGPT, and especially the part of like always check with a real source, because ChatGPT, it's not a real source, right? If you think about it in an academic kind of way, that what is generated is actually correct. And I think at the same time, it's also the other way around. I mean, the example that I gave earlier, right, is think about your employees. Hey, where could they misuse it in a way, right? And then we come to the topic of, in general, what does AI do for us in the workforce, in society? How do we want to change that? I've had some discussions around that as well recently with different people. Like the question, okay, let's assume, right? And ChatGPT will not have that big of an impact, but other applications that will come in the future altogether, they will. It's like, hey, as a workforce, we can increase our productivity by 40%. Yeah, so we need only 60% of the time for the same amount of work. What does that mean? Yeah. And those 40% that go away will not be equally, that will not be uniformly distributed over all employees. Do we say we try to let everyone work a bit less? Do we give them just more work, right? So they are more productive, but the same money, or maybe a bit of both, right? And I find this very interesting questions that I don't have the answer about. And I think organizations probably need to define their own principles, and it probably will be a USP for a company that says, hey, if we have an AI to make ourselves more productive, you will have less hours to work, but you'll get the same money, for example. That could be a USP for companies in the future. And I think this is actually something that I've been talking about for a year now. Hey, how will AI change our workforce, the workforce composition, and things like that? But now it starts to resonate with people. Yes, we need to think about that, because because now they see something. Now they see what we mean. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was about to comment. So, what you were talking about, like the increase in productivity brought by technology in general and AI in particular, is not new, right? And the implications of that, right? We hear since decades that AI or technology, there are jobs that are going to disappear because of AI, or the risk that they will disappear is very, very high. If the event of ChatGPT, let's call it that way, just made that painfully obvious to everybody, that this is really here. AI really exists. It's not just something on a PowerPoint or marketing. This is an example of it. There's lots of others, but this one is one that people can relate to more easily, and they think about, this is AI, right?
What does that mean? And what does that mean for the specific people? And I think also, right, because it will come in large masses in a similar way like the Industrial Revolution. And
yes,
we can see it coming. So there will be jobs, as you said, where 80, 90% can go. What does it mean for those people, right?
yeah.
We need to identify that now to kind of help them find new skills, find new competences
It is.
and think about what you do with those people. Yeah, are you going to let them go, or are you going to reskill them, use them in a different way in your organization? And this is, to me, I mean, yeah, I said, I mean, I get a first kind of response from C-level to like, yeah, that's something I need to think about, but it's not yet something that they are like, okay, now we need to take action. How can we do this, right?
Yeah, this topic is a difficult one, right?
Yes.
So
the future will tell. We don't know.
There is a book, a couple of books, an author, Yuval Harari. I don't know if you know him. He wrote a book called Homo Deus. He wrote a book called Sapiens, and another one called Homo Deus. And he's he's one of my favorite authors. He's a historian, but he writes about these problems. And in one of the books, he asks, what happens to people when so agriculture, people moved during the Industrial Revolution, moved from agricultural jobs to industrial jobs, right? And now they are moving more to services jobs. So a very low percentage of the population works in agriculture, like 3% in developed countries, no more than that. 20% works in industry, and the rest works in services. Now, if AI is going to replace jobs in services, what's going to happen? What are people going to do? Obviously, there will be new jobs, like, I don't know, virtual world designer for the metaverse, whatever. Or like jobs like didn't exist 10 years ago, like influencers and things like that. There'll be new jobs, but will there be enough jobs? Probably not. And what will people do, right? It's a very long discussion. I think we could have an episode just to talk about this.
Maybe one more thing about that is I would truly hope that this next revolution, the AI revolution, right? Maybe we can call it like that. That we as a society manage it in such a way that we can all work a bit less and enjoy life a bit more. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great?
This would be
That's
great.
my hope for the future.
Everybody works a little less. Unfortunately, if the society is very egalitarian, this will be ideal. Everybody works only 2 days a week instead of 5. And everything is fine. The problem is that it's not easy to create those egalitarian societies, and actually it's not what we are observing that it's happening.
No, not at all.
So there probably will be people that will be very well off, who will profit a lot from this. There are others that will lose their purpose, and will lose their purpose maybe very fast. And this is the scary part. And and they cannot reinvent themselves, for example, and find a new occupation because they are too old, or they're not able to, or they have a completely different background. And this is the challenge, I think. There's solutions like universal income, ideas like that. So I'm excited about the future, but of course a bit scared too, even though I'm in the middle of it, and I have friends that tell me, "Oh, you are part of this." Well, we are all part of this, because if nobody wanted to use this ChatGPT, then it would not get the traction that it has. The fact is that people want to use it, like the iPhone, like the internet.
Yes. Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, we move a bit off the topic of ChatGPT because
Sure.
I feel we could talk about this for hours. Focusing more on what you do for companies, or what you have been doing the last years for companies. Let's say I am an executive of let's say an insurance company, a medium-sized insurance company with 1,000 employees. What advice would you give me in terms of what I need to do to build my AI strategy?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's good you say, like, I'm an executive, because that's the first thing that is so important.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I've seen over and over and over again the last couple of years, all companies where AI initiatives are started, but it's not a supported topic by C-level, it just doesn't fly. Right?
Okay. Why not?
It's a good question. From my observation, I think it has to do with, to make it fly, you require a transformation in your organization. Like, you can start and you can maybe get lucky with one or two low-hanging fruits, where you can build a machine learning model, put it in production, generate some value. But we still see, like, all of these studies, right? 85% of projects don't make it into production, right? So it's, and that's also what I observe. It takes quite a while before you manage to get your first machine learning model in production. And that's especially true for companies with legacy. Right? If you're a startup and you build your own new solution, it's easier. But or a technology company, yeah. But when you speak about insurance companies or banks or whichever kind of company that's been around for since before
years.
the internet, right? They have a lot of legacy in their culture, in the way that they work, in their data, and so on. And to make that change, you need to make strategic changes in the way people think. You need to do a cultural change. You need to simply, because we're still so early phases of this topic, right? You need a lot of different people with different skills. You need to clean up so much to make it work that it just costs a lot of money.
Okay.
And without the C-level support, or like the C-level belief in the topic, I just haven't seen it fly. I haven't seen a company without C-level support that hasn't gone beyond this phase of, I'm just making proof of concepts, right?
So the first thing is C-level support.
Yes.
What else? I mean, what is there a recipe? Could you give me a recipe? How do I do that? Let's say I am an insurance company. We have, let's say, two lines of business, very simple: automotive and property, like housing for private families. And I want to start using AI, right? I want to start using AI in my value chain. I'm not sure where, right? I just heard that there's a lot of potential in that. Where do I start? So I want to drive this. I'm C-level. I understand this is the first ingredient. What are the other ones?
So typically, most companies that get started, right, they want to start small. What I recommend as a first step, and I've also seen that work well with companies that have had C-level that wanted to get started, is to go through a proper ideation phase. Because one thing that also many companies make as a mistake is like, oh, I want to start AI. Let me first start with the mistakes or the pitfalls. Let's hire a data scientist and hope that everything will be okay, that magically AI will solve all our problems, right? And then we'll just pick a use case that sounds good, and
I'm sorry.
Start going.
Continue,
Bless
please.
you.
Okay.
We just pick a use case that sounds good, that we've seen on the internet or on a conference or whatsoever, and we'll just go with it, right? This is how typically people or organizations have started the topic of AI in the past. Then with the result of like, okay, we realize we don't have the data, the people don't want it will not bring value, etc., etc., and the initiative is stopped. So to avoid that, I would say it's important to go through a proper ideation phase. And if you say, I really just want to try, it's all about
who should participate in that ideation phase?
I mean, the data scientists that you hired, right? People that have knowledge about the data, the technology that's there. Ideally, like some kind of an innovation manager that you have available in the company, and potential like head of departments or even people in the departments that work. Business people, yes, very important. And you go through generating ideas, and there's many different ways that you can generate ideas to kind of use AI. Always important there to start with the strategy of your organization, because that's also one key for buy-in, right? It's like, what do you want to do? Well, if that has a positive impact on the strategy, it has a positive impact on the KPI, so it has a positive impact on the bonus. It makes people interested. And then go through, well, generating the ideas, but then also prioritizing them, right? Understanding which one will have a larger impact than the other, but also what's the feasibility. Yeah. So if you and not just that, also viability. Do people actually want it, right? If I'm going to build a model that helps my sales force to cross-sell, but my sales force knows it all better, they don't want to actually use an AI to prioritize their work, then it's not viable, right? So impact, feasibility, viability.
What about effort?
Effort. So that for me is part of feasibility, right?
Okay.
So it's
if it's too much effort,
you may not want to be doing it now. That doesn't mean it's not the right thing in a few years down the line, because this feasibility, for me, and you can like digest it in a couple of like components. So we talk about technology, about the data, also about the organization, like culturally, where do you stand, and the skills available of people in the organization, right? So if today you say I want to build a conversational AI, but I don't have a data scientist with NLP background, well, not less feasible, right? But maybe a few years down the line, you've built the team, you've grown the competencies, etc. Okay. And then, well, choose 1, 2, 3 use cases to focus on that you've prioritized with basically the highest probability of putting into production. Yeah. So that we go down from 85 to maybe hopefully 40%, 30%, because it still can go wrong, right? And then put interdisciplinary teams together to work on that use case. So the business people need to be involved, right? In the project team, right? You'd want a translator, somebody who translates between business and data science, a data scientist, but also the people that involved that are very deep into the data. And then kind of get and that's like the second part. So first is get the right use cases. The second one is the interdisciplinary team. And then the third one is basically for those use cases, get your data and technology sorted. Because that's also I'm sure you've seen it as well. The companies say like, data lake, data mesh, we're going to do that across the whole organization without thinking, is this what we need, right? Let's buy a license for one of the big platforms that can help us do machine learning. Well, maybe now is not the time to invest in that. Let's just use the technology that is fit for purpose for these first use cases, because the goal of that is to kind of show that there's value in the topic, right? So that's kind of the minimum viable way to go for me. Yeah. Minimum viable way to go. I like that.
Trying to kind of organize the ideas in my head about what you said. So you mentioned C-level support. Then you talked about hiring data scientists. It seems that that's a prerequisite, or at least you should have some data scientists in-house. I have a question about that.
I don't
Should
think
you
no,
hire
that's
should you
no.
hire a
This
bunch of
is
data scientists? Should you work
no.
with a partner? Should you have a balance between maybe a couple of data scientists internally and then some coming from a partner company? That's one question. Then you mentioned ideation. Running ideation workshops, they come in many, let's say, forms and tastes, different kind of flavors of the way you can run such ideation initiatives, let's say. I would also like to ask you about that, and then there's a few more. So then you talked about you have the ideation, you need to prioritize, and then you need to understand what are the capabilities. You talked about capabilities that you need in order to implement those things, in order to implement those use cases, and not try to build the big platform from scratch, but try to create sort of the minimum viable capability set that allows you to deliver those use cases. You can think about the future, how a large platform would look like, but you don't need to do it right away.
Exactly.
So let's pick up on that. So data scientists, do I hire a team of data scientists, or do I hire one or two data scientists and I work with a company that helps me build up that data science capability, or I just bring a company, a partner in that does everything?
So I would say, right, what is important to have internally and what can you kind of source externally? So internally, you need the strategic view, right? You can have a partner supporting you in that, but you need the strategic view. You need to have a solid understanding of your own business and how it's going to change processes, etc. So you need this business stakeholder internally. Then what you will need is people that understand the internal data, if you're going to use internal data inside out. That can be a data scientist or analyst, but it can also be another person that's just very deep into the data, right? And ideally, but that's typically not something that you find in companies, is a person with translation skills who has a good understanding of the business, but also can kind of do the translation towards what does it mean for my data science, so to say. I think everything else you can source externally at the start, but I would recommend not to kind of choose one partner to do that with for the first couple of years, right? Because I mean, from my personal experience, right, the moment you start digging into the data, it's when the good questions come up. And you can use that know-how about the data and about the business to be much quicker in use case number 2, 3, and 4. Yeah. So it's if you choose a partner, don't like get one freelancer for one project and one other freelancer for another project, because there's so much know-how that's going to lose there. And I think the moment where you say, good, I want this topic to be strategic in my organization and grow it bigger, that's the moment where I would say it starts to make sense to hire the capabilities in-house. But then still you can work together with externals for specific projects, for specific skills. And it depends on the size of the company, right? If you have a company where there may be 100 to 200 professionals that work in the data and AI space, you can have a lot of capabilities internally. You can have an NLP specialist. But if you only have maybe 10, 15, 20 people, then it doesn't. And then it makes sense to source that from externally, right?
Okay.
So it also depends a lot on the size. Yeah.
All right. One thing that comes to mind you said was an innovation manager. You mentioned the role of an innovation manager. So again, back to the role playing, I am the executive of this insurance company. I am, let's say I am the CTO, or I am the CIO, or I am even the CEO. And I want to do this. So should I hire or should I nominate an innovation manager, somebody who drives this of this role, or is this the role of the CIO? What how do you see this?
It's look, I've seen many different setups, and it's like always is such a question. It always like it depends, right? I've seen CFOs driving the topic in a couple of different companies. It's because they're like not the traditional CFO, but it's a typical person that's good with data, right? So understands data and is maybe a bit more creative than your typical CFO. So the topic is underneath the CFO. And in other companies, it's in the strategy department. And in other companies, it's in the IT department. And it typically also depends on the person who drives it. And in most companies that get started, it is getting started by a person that does not necessarily have a full like data and AI background like you and I have, right? It starts with a person, and then people get hired or get initiated to work on the topic. Ideally, now again, talking also about different like maturity levels, but ideally, I would see the topic in like strategy and innovation. That part of the strategy and innovation department, there's a center of excellence, an analytics center of excellence, or a data science center of excellence that drives the topic over the whole organization. That includes being responsible for what's our vision with the topic of AI, what's our strategy, or like our data and AI strategy, what's our organizational structure, what kind of roles do we have, what kind of career paths do we have for the different people, how do we drive the cultural change, et cetera. And then for companies that are maybe a little bit more mature, that have a couple of AI products into production, like embedded in their application, they're making decisions with it, it makes sense to also have in the different business units teams that work specifically for sales, specifically for finance, specifically for HR, that are closely aligned with the center of excellence, but work on their own products. And then typically, I've seen a company, Yelp, for example, they have a big experimentation department, and it's kind of the R&D kind of way to come up with new ideas. There's maybe also some more money that is being spent where we're not so sure if there's something coming out of it. But that's again like in a central function. So it's like you call it like a hub and spoke kind of organization, and that's something that grows over time. Right?
I'm a big fan of one thing that you said there, having the data scientists, having the people who are actually working on these things sitting with the business next to them, the next desk, preferably. Nowadays, that's difficult because most people work from home, but this is another topic. Could be a whole new episode, but I'm a big fan of that because I've seen setups where somehow somebody in the business wants to innovate. There is an innovation person, but then they basically hand over the work to the IT that then works with the vendor, and they are very far from the business. They are not sitting next to the people, to the business people, and this is not this is not as productive.
Yeah.
One other thing that comes to mind is that I've seen over and over and over is related to what you said. Business people need to be involved. This is absolutely clear. But what I observe many times is that that business people, so there's two or three things. One of them is they do this part-time, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't work because they keep being pulled to operational tasks and they need to keep the shop running, basically. Mm-hmm. And on the side, they do some innovation. This doesn't work. This is, to me, something I've observed it over and over. And the innovation part of the job always falls short because they need to keep the business running. And that's more important. It always takes priority. This is one thing. And then the other aspect is when when you have an innovation department, what you're talking about, or a center of excellence or whatever, and then they cooperate with the business team. Now, what happens often is that, okay, the innovation department is the cool place of the company, and the old business is the not cool place. And sometimes the budget even gets shifted from one to the other. All of a sudden, you have the innovation department getting budget, mm-hmm. and you have the business operations department that is supposed to cooperate with them, jealous of the new empowered innovation department. How do you see this? Is this?
Yeah, this is, and it's again, one of the reasons why we need transformation. There are mm-hmm. so many fine little details that are that are important, right? There again, I see like companies that start off, they have the budget, all of the AI budget allocated to the innovation department or the center of excellence, right?
Right.
At one point in time, the business is starting to get value out of AI products. And that's the time that they will basically need to start paying, right? Paying for new projects, and especially if they come up with ideas and they want it, that's the time they should start paying for the services, so to say, that it comes out of their budget and gets reallocated to the center of excellence, or even what we said, right, that they hire their own people. Mm-hmm. It's very delicate what's the right moment to make that kind of switch. Mm-hmm. And it may also be that for some departments, it's not the same as for others. Mm-hmm. I've seen this gone wrong, right? Done too early, and then nothing's happening anymore. Mm-hmm. I've also seen it done too late, and the center of excellence is overwhelmed with requests, right? Mm-hmm. Because it gets reallocated in some kind of way, but not directly mm-hmm. to the marketing department, for mm-hmm. example. What you also said about like the innovation being only like say 20% of the job. This again, it has to do with incentives and how you set up the team. Mm-hmm. It's difficult to do it right from the start. You will mm-hmm. have to run with that. But I agree with you at some point, and that's also companies that are more mature. I see they are kind of creating these roles in the business side. I'll call like data champions or ambassadors or things like that, or sometimes also analytics translators, but right from the business perspective, mm-hmm. that are kind of the first roles that are responsible for that, for driving the data and AI topic in their department, to kind of spot mm-hmm. opportunities and to get projects going, etc. And then if you talk about even more mature organizations, right, they may have an AI product manager or product owner sitting in the business responsible for all AI components of an application. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I know that there's no one recipe for success here. What do you think about there are things that work, things that don't, and just because something worked in one organization, it doesn't mean it's going to work in the next. What do you think about, let's say, going back to my insurance scenario, right? To make it a bit more real. Now, should I, as an executive, train my people, my insurance people, in technology, and in these topics, in data, so that they get a better understanding of this? Or should I get tech people and then train them in the business? Or what should I do? Which one is best?
I'd say combination of both.
Okay.
Bring them closer together, right? It's all about building the bridge between two people that do not have an idea how to talk to each other. And I've been in those meetings, right, where you have on the one side, you have a senior person in the organization who knows a lot about insurance, but nothing about data. And on the other side of the table, a data scientist or a data person. They talk to each other, both walk out of the meeting, have the idea that they understand each other and that they're on the same page. And I sat there understanding both sides, because I've worked a lot in insurance, right, before, as well as data science. So I speak both languages, and I'm like, you don't understand each other, right? Okay. So it's this bridge needs to be built from both sides.
Okay. And how do you help them understand each other? Tell me. Because that will be useful to me too.
Let's start from the business side, and there's different components to it, right? So I think, well, the first thing is it's just about education. Internally, I believe senior management, like senior management at C-level, they should get a course. What's AI, right? And what does it mean for me in my role? What are the typical pitfalls? What are things that I need to look out for? How do I kickstart this for my department?
A sort of executive
maybe like
education.
Half a day. Executive education. It can be half a day. I think that already makes a lot of difference. And if you take it like a level down, say middle management, or those people that will be more involved into specific projects, right? Send them to an analytics translation course so that they learn, again, what is AI, how do models work, but also how do these projects run? What are the typical pitfalls? What is to be expected, right?
Right.
I get this brilliant example of a company that I worked with, like, and build a prototype, a mock-up. And the executive on the other side, it's nice. Can we put it live tomorrow? No, we can't, right? It's not possible. Had they been educated, they would have known, and they would have known what to expect and like what the size is and the risk of these kind of projects. And then the third level, and that's something that I see with companies that are a bit further down the line in their journey. It's about the general data literacy. How do I, on the one side, make decisions based on data or like AI outputs, right? In certain cases, we talk about probabilities, and then again, like to make the round back, ChatGPT is a really nice example where now we see like, okay, yes, we can use this output, but we need to verify with a real source, right? And with any kind of recommendation for decision support, people need to understand that it's a model, that it has a probability, or that it's uncertain, right? And at the same time, also, how do I just like in general, what's the importance of data that I, when I generate data, that I do it in the right way? So that's the business side.
That a model like that will answer whatever, regardless of how insecure it is of the answer. It just answers, and you don't know how confident the model is about the answer. You just get it. ChatGPT, just get anything. You don't know.
I mean, you could actually, right, put a certain kind of confidence interval around your results. But then if you do that, the user also needs to understand what that is, right?
Yes. So you need education. We need to know what that means. Yeah.
Exactly. And then on the data science side, I think it's and it won't be for everyone, right? You have those that are more tech focused and really just enjoy building the models, etc., etc. But it's important that in your team, in your data science team, and then to speak not just about data scientists, but also engineers, machine learning engineers, data engineers, etc., that people, that are some of those that get closer to the business, or get towards the role of an analytics translator, learning consultative skills, learning just general about business, to ask the right questions when working on a project. Is like, how, just like it's okay, what's our output, what's our model out, how do we optimize, and to really make the step of asking the question, example, what's worse, a false positive or a false negative? What is the dollar amount against that, and how can we use that to optimize our model, for example? But also, how does it impact our strategy? Yeah. So building the bridge from both sides.
Okay. So one thing that comes to mind is what is usually also a challenge is hiring people. How do I hire data scientists? How do I find good people?
I find this very difficult. It's like, I mean, and it depends, right? What is it that you need?
But how do I get into that? I mean, I am. Let's say again.
If you don't have the competencies, then I would, and you want to hire a data scientist, get external help to define what it is that you need. That's why I also say, like, it's you don't just hire a data scientist and then you get started. You better work together first with an external company that has data scientists that can help you determine which of those external data scientists is the right one for your project, and learn. You first need to learn what it is that you need before you can actually start hiring those people yourself. And that's not step one, that's step 5 or 6, right? You need to learn first, but then still it will be difficult to find the right person. And I also think the job of data scientists, like, you already see that it kind of starts to split, right? You have those that focus on proof of concept, on those that focus on models to put into production, those like computer vision, NLP, but I can also well imagine that there's an industry focus, right? I'm an insurance data scientist, or a banking, or a pharma.
Okay, I got it. So how do I find a good company to help me then? Because I've got, again, I am that insurance company. I have 1,000 employees, so I'm not gigantic, but I'm also not small. I'm sort of mid-sized, and I've got all these consulting companies. Everybody's saying that they're the best. They all have great data science consultancy capabilities, but there's also mid-sized and smaller like consultancy companies in this area. How do I choose? Right? Do I focus on
business opportunity?
Okay.
I would, to be honest, I think it's about finding a trusted advisor that doesn't have the incentives to place their own people, right? To really help you with that.
Okay. Do I focus?
What would you say? What would you say?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I would say. Well, I would look for 2 or 3 things on a company. You said one thing, the trusted, but trust is something you earn. It's not something that you. So how do you trust them if you don't know them? I would look for some experience in the industry where I'm working on. So because there's lots of data science, lots of AI out there. Well, what kind of problems have you solved in my business, in my vertical, in this case, in insurance, and probably even more specifically in the lines of business that I have, like automotive and property, for example, and maybe I would start from that, and then I would try I'm on that side, right? I'm one of them. I'm one of these
Yes.
consultancy companies, so I'm biased. But I would give them a chance to prove themselves, not invest too much in something. Give them a chance to do themselves. Give them one case to work on, to bring in something, give them access to some data and see what they can do with it. Small risk project to start with, and then build up on that. And as more trust, not just give a big contract to some company that
No,
just,
definitely.
no matter how big they are, not to Microsoft, not give them a large contract, because that's high risk. And I would start small always.
Yes, this is a very good point, and that's why I said, right, and I agree with your approach. That's why I say hiring a data scientist, that's like step 5 or 6, right? Internally, finding the right company to work with. Yes, like that's also the right approach. But I think starting small and learn and iterate. There's also like one of the like success factors for actually being able to generate value with AI is having this culture of making mistakes, like in the agile kind of way, like iterative learn. It is a new topic and you will need to learn and educate yourself, and you do that best by making mistakes, but also, well, actually educating yourself about the topic. So not just, hey, what is machine learning, but also how do I set up my organization? How do I build a data strategy? We haven't even talked about like regulations, ethics, things like that, right? So there's so many different aspects that there are good education, right? So the one is at my university, but there are others too. Where, and if you get this started, I would totally recommend any organization to send off the main person that's going to drive this to an education that teaches them how to build an AI organization. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that sounds good. So so if we go back to what we talked about at the beginning, so we talked about hiring a data scientist, generating ideas, prioritizing, then involving the business. We talked about that. We talked about organizational setup, educating the organization. Now, when it comes to actually doing, taking one of those use cases and bringing it to life, what are the things that you need to take into account, and how do you measure the success of such thing? I mean, the measuring success of such a project is hard. It's something that measuring the value, you mentioned value many times today, measuring the value of such a project is a challenge, because these are not typical IT projects. This is a transformation. So how do you measure the success of such project?
I mean, first, like, how do you make it a success? Have a dedicated analytics translator on your project. So the person that bridges between business and data science, again,
the translator,
but also to ensure the adoption. How to measure success? Well, ideally, you've defined what success looks like in the ideation phase. So before you touch your data, ideally, that you actually, I mean, and there are small little things that you can actually think about. So what is it that I'm predicting? What action do I take out of that prediction, and what value does that generate, and how can I measure this value? And if you cannot measure that value, then there's probably no value in it for you as an organization. Yeah. So you need to think it through all the way to the end. And ideally, when you start generating ideas, you start with, how do we generate value? How can we measure that? What action do we need to take to get that value? And what prediction do we need for that? Right. And then I think the second thing, so that's at the start, you can already define what value looks like. Now, when you say, okay, I'm putting something in production, how do you measure the success? There's actually three components that I see. So one is, well, the business impact, right? So the KPIs, and there can be main KPIs, but there can also be other KPIs that maybe are being influenced. There's the technical one. So just think about like, what's your accuracy like? Is my model actually performing the way it should? I can also think about doing that with A/B testing, things like that. And the third one is usage metrics.
Adoption, right?
Adoption. Is it actually being used? And the combination of the three, that's how I would measure the success, right? And I mean, that's still like the topic of how to define, measure success when we speak about AI, like on a project level, but also on organizational level. That's actually something that research still needs to be done. It's also a topic in development where we're still very early stages, where companies are starting to ask the questions, but not everyone has the answer yet. I mean, I haven't seen a full-on dashboard or like a number like that seems truly solid of, hey, this is our return on investment with the topic of AI.
So the topic of AI and especially machine learning. So I just tell you a short story of exactly how success and measuring success is key. We participated last year in we did a project last year for a customer. They gave us a bank, gave us a set of data. We basically trained the model with great results from a technical perspective. Now, as soon as the model went to production, it became clear that it was not performing well with the real life data. There had been huge data drift since, so that we trained the model on the wrong data in essence. So we trained on the model on data before COVID, and obviously the behavior patterns of the customers changed dramatically after COVID. Last summer, for example, was completely different. So, and the project was not considered a success because of that.
How do you find success, huh?
Defining success is key, right? Because we did our job. We did, in my opinion, a good job. Now, of course, it's not enough to do it once. And this is the next thing that I wanted to bring up, the topic of, okay, let's say that you bring a machine learning project to production live, and you prove that it has business impact, and you prove that and it's technically accurate. So and it actually has adoption and people are using it. What do you need to do in order to keep it that way?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, then we're talking about like, because now we're having a product, right? And a product that needs maintenance.
Yes.
And it needs a maintenance strategy. Again, for me, clearly the role of the analytics translator or AI product owner, product manager to define that strategy and to identify what are the risks, where can it go wrong? How do we set up monitoring for accuracy of the model, but also just in general data drift for my input features, right? And what are the thresholds that we say now we need to retrain? Or do we define upfront, we need to retrain once a year, once every 6 months, or every week, or maybe every 10 minutes, right? There's use cases where that happens.
How do we learn? How often do we need to retrain? Because this is also key, right? Because sometimes you don't know how often you need to retrain. You need to learn that, right?
You need to learn that.
Well, as soon as you start getting live data and actual real usage in real life for the model, sometimes you get completely unexpected things, and you need to change that, right? So monitoring, you talked about monitoring of accuracy. What about monitoring of usage? What if the model seems to be performing well, but the adoption starts to decrease.
Yeah, then that's something to look into, right? Start to
And you need to
speak to
monitor
the
that.
user. You need to monitor that, exactly.
What about monitoring the impact?
Yes, as well. I would recommend doing that, and also defining like, what are our success criteria, and then there again, like that we talk about like hard metrics, KPIs, but I think it's also you can also define success as, hey, we've learned, or we've actually gotten these users to start engaging with an AI product for the first time, and that's also a success, right? Even though maybe the business value as such is not there. So very important to set up a good monitoring dashboard with the different components, and have somebody with the responsibility to monitor that, right? And to follow up. And then we also start to get into very interesting things of like, yeah, okay, so if you think about this is part, maybe someone does that on the business side, but the model was developed in the center of excellence.
Okay.
What kind of SLA do we have between them, right? How often? How is it getting
paid? It's a product, right?
Etc.
All of a sudden, it's a product.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about there are other things that you mentioned, like ethics and also regulation and security is also an aspect these days, privacy. We don't have time, unfortunately, for that today. We can try the next time. But I wanted to talk to you about, so you are also data scientist of background, right?
Yes.
What is that, and I understand, what made you decide to become a data scientist and stay on this field? What is it that you love about it? What is it that you like about this field?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've already enjoyed data as a kid. My dad used to tell me, just give her a bucket with data and she's happy. It's very interesting.
Okay, a bucket with data.
A bucket with data, yes.
What does that mean? Okay.
I mean, I studied mathematics and econometrics, and I just slid into my first job as a data scientist. I was very lucky. I was back in the Netherlands, and I was actually part of an actuarial department in insurance. But there was a small group, and we called it back then business statistics and economics, and we did data science project. Like, the results were in PowerPoint, yes, but we used R. We used R to generate models. Yeah, but we didn't embed it into an application, right? It wasn't used to make decisions on individual data points, but more strategic decisions on how to change processes and things like that. Actually, then I moved to Switzerland. That was in 2011, and here the topic didn't arrive yet. So I stayed with the company with Ernst & Young, but I changed to management consulting. For me, it was a blessing, actually, because I was forced to learn the consultative skills, to learn how to run projects, stakeholder management, etc., etc. And then in 2014, the topic kicked off, and then I got my first job leading a team with focus of sales data analytics. I have, in those 3 years where I've had a different focus, always looked around, and it's like, I want to do analytics again. I want to do analytics again, but it didn't pop up yet. But then end of 2013, it did, and I took my chances. And with the experience I had back in the Netherlands and in the UK, I was a good candidate. So
very good. Yeah. So what advice would you give to somebody who wants to pursue a data science career? What are the skills that I need to develop, other than obviously the technical, the mathematical skills? What are the skills that I need in order to be successful?
Yeah. So I would say, right, especially for those that are really want to get started, is find your field of focus. Yeah. So don't try to understand everything, but find what type of models do you prefer most, what kind of industry, what kind of application do you like most, and specialize yourself, because there will come a point where we're not hiring a data scientist, we're hiring an insurance sales computer vision data scientist, right? So find your way of focus. I think the second thing is I don't think we actually probably have too many data scientists at one point. And I think it will become more and more important to actually have these translation skills. So learn how to be a consultant, consultative skills.
Okay. And where do I get
to
consulted?
ask the right questions and things like that. I mean, where do you get that?
Where do I get consultant skills? Do I need to go and work for a consultancy company, or can I get them somewhere else?
I think you can develop those skills also somewhere else, but actually most probably 2 years in a consulting firm focusing on pure consulting projects. Yes, I think that's actually, I've never thought about that. This is a good provoking question. I think, well, for me, it has worked out really well. So
yeah, this is something I wish I would have done myself at the beginning of my career, because I missed those skills at some point and I needed to develop them over time. I'm still always developing them, but it took me much longer, right? I think that working in a consulting company where you actually get these skills by watching others, by with training and all, and doing actual projects with customers is very valuable. So I think I would give similar advice.
yes,
Learn these skills are extremely important for a data scientist or for almost any technical role you have.
Yeah, any bridging role, right? Yeah. And yes, and I think the bridging is where the value will be generated for most organizations. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Afke. I think we ran out of time.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us in this episode. Is there anything you would like to add? Any thoughts, closing thoughts, anything you'd like to add?
I am hopeful for a good future with AI for society. And 2023 will be the year of AI.
You think?
Any company that hasn't started will get started. And there's a lot of good and cool things ahead of us in this topic.
So you're hopeful?
Yes, I'm hopeful.
Okay. You don't think AI will be the end of the world?
No.
I share that feeling. I think that AI is technology and will be here to help us, and we'll find our way as humankind to solve these issues. I believe that it will make things better. It will improve things, even our relationship to nature. We just need to figure out how, but I think it will help, definitely. Thanks again, Afke, for joining us. Thank you for watching and listening to our episode. Don't forget to give us a like or to follow us, whatever makes sense. And see you soon.
Thanks, Paulo.
Thank you.